everybody. Our psalm today is Psalm 18. If you want to turn in your Bibles to Psalm 18, that'd be good. All right, we're gonna, because this psalm is too long and too awesome, we're only going to cover the first 19 verses today. So I'll just read through the first bit. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me, the cords of Sheol entangled me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord. To my God I cried for help. From his temple he heard my voice, and my cry to him reached his ears. Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, thick clouds, dark with water. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. And he sent out his arrows and scattered them. He flashed forth his lightnings and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. He sent from on high, he took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. So I'm just going to kind of, we don't have time to go into the rest of the psalm, but this first section, I kind of want to pick out verse 3 to keep in our brains, because it's kind of like David's thesis line in this poem. It goes like this. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. And then the rest of the poem is basically describing just that. And it echoes other places in the Bible, like in Joel. Joel talks about everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. So there's this idea of calling on God's name and then salvation coming. And here's David's description of his call. He says, I am in a real bad place. I'm about to die, basically. He is right on the doorstep of the grave. And he says, in my distress, I called upon the Lord. To my God, I cried for help. From his temple, he heard my voice. My cry to him reached his ears. So there's even like as he's calling, he's also writing down, yes, God has heard me. I know God has heard me. God is listening. And the question that comes to mind is, who do you turn to for help when you're in trouble? And maybe our trouble isn't as severe as David's, like we're not about to die. But maybe some of you, I don't know, maybe some of you watching this are. Maybe you're fighting sickness or relationship breakdown or whatever it is. When you're in trouble, who do you call to? Who do you call for help? Who do you rely on? When you rely on people, like I know for me, I'm very emotional and kind of all over the place. So I have a few people in my life that I need because they are rock steady. And I can describe them like, and David's the same way, but he calls God, you are my rock, you are my fortress. And so when I turn to people, and if they are studying, and if they're truly doing what's good for me, they will actually point me back to God, to the only firm, like forever firm rock. Because every human is fallible, every human will let us down, will not be enough sometimes, but if you have people in your life that point you to God, good. But if you're relying on people who just try and, one day it's not going to be enough. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. Who do you turn to when you need help? And because this God that we turn to, David calls him a rock, he calls him a fortress, a shield, horn of salvation, a stronghold. Like those are some, and especially for a fighting guy like David was, these are the best descriptions he has of like a solid, firm foundation, a fortress that you can hide in, and then enemies come and they just break their teeth on the walls, and they come and nothing shakes it. Right? That's David's picture of God in this. God is trustworthy, and he's also worthy of praise, like it says in verse 7 to 15. David goes on to describe God basically tearing open heaven, shaking the whole earth, like raining down fire, and just like this beautiful picture of God, and terrifying, actually, beautiful and terrifying picture of God coming to David's rescue. Oh, it's so good. And you get the picture that this God is powerful. He has authority everywhere over all the nations, and there's nothing that can stand up to this giant hailstorm inducing God who breathes out like I like how it says that. I'm gonna read that. Then the channels of the sea were seen, the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of breath from your nostrils. Like God breathes out of his nose, and then like the whole ocean disappears. Basically, that's what David is saying. So yeah, this God is trustworthy, and he's massively powerful and worthy of praise. You think you kind of get that picture. And then he talks about how God, or what God is doing to rescue him in verses 16 to 19. He sent from on high, after destroying David's enemies in verse 14 and 15. He sent from on high, he took me, he drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me. For they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. So the idea that God is like tearing heaven, shaking earth, destroying David's enemies, and then reaching down and like pulling David up out of the water. And you get that idea of like drowning, right? David's drowning. When things become overwhelming, it feels like drowning, hey? And you're just kind of like, I can't swim. So it's amazing. When David feels like that, he calls to God for help, and he uses he paints it out for us like this, like God reaches down and draws him up out of deep water, right, to save him from his trouble. And he brought me into a broad and spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. Isn't that amazing that, you know, it seems in this passage that this is like quite a bit of overkill. But you get the idea that God intensely cares about David. and it does seem like a little bit overkill, like God is doing all this stuff and then just like picking up David. But notice that David is a fighting man, and so he has been trusting in God his whole life. And this psalm is written after the Lord. At the beginning, there's a little historical note. It says, he sings this song when the Lord rescued him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. This is like later on in his life when there's kind of been some peace established in his kingdom. And he's kind of looking back and seeing all these times where he's trusted in God, God has saved him. He's called to God, God has saved him. God has rescued him again and again and again. And this is like physical salvation, right? And so he has a deep, deep-seated trust in who God is and what God is going to do. If I call upon the Lord, I will be saved. That's the kind of like, or the effect of calling upon the Lord. And you know, God does do this with David, but the thing is, God goes even further later on. He sends, not only does he tear heaven open, shake the earth, but he sends Jesus down, who is God the Son, to eat our food, drink our water, stub his toe on our rocks, to be a rescue for us. to take our place in dying and rising to life to rescue us, right? But he comes down. That idea of God reaching down from heaven has now become God coming down to be with us and rescuing us, right? Leading captive in his train. And it's amazing that this God delights in us. So basically, the encouragement I have for you as you meditate on this psalm is keep that verse 3 in mind. I call to the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. So whatever is, if there's something that's making you feel like you're drowning, maybe there's broken relationships happening around you, maybe you're sick, maybe you're fearful, maybe whatever the situation is, if you feel like you're drowning, call to God for help, and then just watch as God rips heaven open, shakes the earth, and reaches down to save you. You can trust him.